It's 11 o'clock, Jason. We are going to, let me pull the screen up here. How's everybody doing? Christian here alongside Jason. And we are going to get this session started off. I've got to get my right screen properly set up. Okay.
Curious, can everybody hear the water in the background? It just sounds kind of tranquil and serene this morning. It's kind of nice. Coming right off the Metallica soundtrack.
Okay. All right. So this is going to be a little bit of a different session this time. Not
Yeah,
as many
way different.
slides.
Right.
Probably more thought-provoking than
Hopefully.
we've done before.
Yeah.
This is a topic that Jason and I hash out a lot. And we talk about setting goals. We talk about how we arrive at the goals we're going to set. How do we measure them? How do we track them? And it transcends from personal to professional. It doesn't start professional.
Correct.
And so it really crosses both worlds for me, and I know it does for you. And so we're going to really share our thought process and our methods, if you will. And we're not experts.
Right,
but
exactly.
This is how we go about defining, setting goals, what they mean to us, and then just our process kind of end to end. We're going to get a little reflective. We're going to peel back the onion a little bit.
Yep.
And just kind of put ourselves out there and open up. And hopefully this is becomes a useful tool, or at least sheds some light on an area that could help your business and your company.
Yeah, and our goal is, at the end of this, if you walk away with a sense of self-reflection and a sense that goals are important, and it kind of, spurs that thinking of setting goals for next year, if it motivates you to do those things, and we feel like this has been a success.
Yeah.
And we're totally not experts. We're, a small company, a couple guys that just really want to try to do the right thing. But we feel like this is a timely conversation to have in mid-November, and it's good to reflect on these things as we start to map out what next year might be for us.
Absolutely. So we're going to go into some slides. You're probably going to hear Jason and I sniffle here and there. I think we're both fighting the end of a cold, and we're outside. But again, the reason we're outside is because every pool guy and gal has been outside in the cold weather and throwing stone and dirt and working with their hands. And, we're no different than you guys. There's no reason we can't work outside as well. And quite honestly, it feels kind of good out here.
Oh,
hands
yeah.
and pockets. It's nice, refreshing fall day here in Virginia. So
we did have some snow yesterday. Yeah,
we did.
I don't know had almost a full ground covering.
Yeah,
and that was pretty cool.
Well, good. All right, so there are 6 folks here. If you have questions along the way, throw them into the Q&A or the chat pane, and we will do our best to keep up with them. We've only got one computer running today, so we'll probably have to pause and review those as we go along.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, let's fire it off, Jason. If I get the right button, there it goes. That's what we're going to start with.
Yeah.
We'll start with why.
Yeah, why are we really, why are we talking about this? Why is it important to take time out of our lives to reflect on goals? I think big book for me in my life is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Right.
Talks a lot about beginning with the end in mind.
Right.
So I think a lot of times I've been guilty, Christian, in my life of waking up in the morning and kind of just going at it, kind of diving in head first without really a perspective of where my life was heading. It's probably years ago. But I think we've all been through phases like that. And I think that we have to see ourselves as the architect, of our lives. And I think anytime, like if we're going to build a swimming pool, for example, what are some things that we have to have in place, before we ever start the project?
We've got to have permits. Got to have the homeowner's permission.
Got to have the homeowner's permission.
Got to have the contract signed. We have to have all the details mapped out.
Yep.
Um,
The guys show up to build the pool. What do
Yeah.
they have to have?
yeah, they got to have the right tools.
Yep.
Right raw materials.
Yep.
The right pool shell.
The right pool shell.
The right equipment. You got to have the excavator, the right excavator.
Yep.
You got to have all the things necessary that make the job function.
What about when they
Smoothly.
show up? How do they know where to start?
Got to have a plan in place.
Got to have a plan. So that plan, what went into creating that plan that they're holding in their hands?
Well, it started with a map of sorts, which is the plat of the property,
Sure.
right? Started with the chosen location of a pool. Started with a lot of measurements, a lot of prep work.
Measurements, prep work, thought, energy, time from the sales
Absolutely.
rep, the planner.
Mhm.
So essentially, anytime we create something that's real, there's really two creations. There's the we could call it a spiritual creation, an intangible creation, but it's the thought and the energy that goes into this mental spiritual creation of this thing. Then we take that vision, that plan. In the case of a pool, we take the plan and then we actually execute and make it a real thing.
Right.
So we have to reflect on our lives in the same way. Like if we just live day to day, then we're not beginning with the end in mind, and we're not really in control, so to speak. We're kind of at the mercy of whatever the day brings or whatever the week or month.
We've set ourselves to be reactive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's the power of beginning with the end in mind. So with that, we need to think about some reflective questions in our lives. So we can probably go to the next slide,
All right.
which talks about the what. So what is it that we want to be doing in terms of what goals do we want to set? And so, I think more times than not, when we've sat down to talk about goals as a company, we have started with something like, how many pools do we want to install this year?
Right.
Right. And even in my own life, as I'm thinking about work, and I think, geez, I'd really like to install 50 pools next year, let's say. What I'm not thinking about is, how does 50 pools help me to be a happy human being, a well-rounded human being?
Right. How does that translate to your personal goals, your family goals?
Right.
Right.
Because let's say I set a goal for 50 pools. If I don't really know why, is it possible that I achieve the goal and still doesn't move me any closer to happiness?
Sure.
Right. Because you can put 50 pools in, still be absolutely miserable.
Right. What does that mean at the end?
What does it mean at the end? So, I think this conversation is a lot bigger than just, we're going to set these specific target numbers that are very business oriented. I think the first question we really have to ask ourselves, whether we own our companies or whether we're employees, regardless, we have to take some time and reflect and ask, what do I want my life to look like in, say, 5 years?
Sure. Like, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, it's a big question.
It is.
So, like, what does a perfect day look like for me 5 years from now? So, like, can I pose that question to you right now?
Sure.
So, this isn't rehearsed. We knew we were going to talk about this, but we didn't go into this at all. So,
right.
So, Christian, 5 years from now, walk us through Christian's perfect day.
My perfect day is going to consist of opportunity to see my kids in the morning.
Okay.
See my wife in the morning. See them off to school or off to summer camp, or depending on the season of the year.
Okay. Why?
Well, because I value that little bit of time in the morning with them.
Okay.
Right. It sets the stage for my day, and just allows me to connect and show support for whatever they're doing in the day. Right.
Okay.
It sets the foundation for our family for the day.
Right.
That time in the morning. And sometimes it's only an hour, right? By the time you get up and everybody's off to the thing. But so it starts with that. My perfect day leads into an enjoyable trip to the office or wherever work is for the day. But I'm looking forward to that drive
Okay.
or I'm looking forward to where I'm headed because I know that what I'm going to be doing that day uh, is working towards something.
Okay.
I like to know that I'm going to solve a problem. I'm going to go work towards achieving something. Um,
So that time of that you have driving into the office,
mhm.
that gives you the opportunity to reflect,
Yes.
gives you time to collect your thoughts.
Yeah.
And that fills a need that you have.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
When I get to work, um, I am working progressively towards something new,
Okay.
something of value for the company. I've never enjoyed feeling like I did not have a hand in the next big thing.
Right.
So I want to be involved in the next big thing.
Okay.
Uh, I want.
What does it look like when you walk in the morning, when you walk in the front door? What do you see?
Um, I see. We're getting deep, man. This is a good conversation. Uh, there are folks there that I enjoy working with.
Okay. So you see people that
Yeah,
you care about, people you have a relationship with.
absolutely, absolutely.
And why is that important to you?
I think that lends to the productivity.
Okay.
I don't know how else to describe that.
So but you value
The people around
strong
me.
relationships
Absolutely,
with the people at work.
absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Um, I have the resources to accomplish what I need to, or I have a plan to obtain the resources to accomplish what I need to.
Okay.
Um,
So you have, so there's a sense that there's stability and that
yes,
there's the resources that are available to help
or
you do what you need to do.
or attainable. Yes,
And you have a plan in place.
yes.
All right.
Um, and I get to it for the day.
Right.
Um, my day wraps up knowing that um, I took a step closer to achieving that thing.
Okay.
Um, that I'm able to go home at the end of the day without worry about um, without too much worry about money.
Okay.
Right?
So you're comfortable.
I'm comfortable.
Yep.
I've got 3 mouths of braces that I'm going to be
Right.
paying for in
Yeah.
5 years. I'm certain. But that's not a worry for me.
Right.
My wife and I have that covered.
Okay.
I have the ability to take her out on a date, or like those things. Not that we're comfortable, but that we're able to, have our time away from the kids as well,
Okay.
uh, and to be able to do all the things for the kids that we want to do.
So when you talk about two important things, I think you talked about are time and then resources.
Yes.
So you want to have the time to be able to go out, take your wife out,
Sure.
and you want to have the resources to be able to live comfortably.
Comfortably.
Okay.
Not extravagantly, but I want to live comfortably.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what I'm not saying you don't have all these things now,
Mhm.
but because I don't know. I mean, frankly, I don't know where you stand with all that. But what are some things that stand in the way of that happening today? Or some things you know you're going to have to accomplish to make that
Mhm.
a reality?
Mm. I I could. I don't think I am as good at setting my long range goals as I could be,
Okay.
and I feel like I don't know that I've pinpointed the things that I want to tackle far enough out. Does that make sense?
Um, so maybe there's not clarity in
Sure,
how you intend to get there.
I think so. Yeah, maybe not full clarity. I just don't think I've achieved that yet.
Right. So how can you? So we'll stop that right there. Thank you for that. By the way, bearing your soul a little bit to us, but so there's an exercise in this of self-reflection.
Sure.
Right. So there's a power reflecting on our lives. Like what makes me a happy person? What are the things that make me happy? What are the things that make me stressed out?
Hmm.
We have to understand ourselves, I think, first.
Yeah.
Um, so all this is going to come around to a business conversation, but I think this is where it starts. There's a power in self-reflection.
Hmm.
Um, and then, so the next question then becomes, once we go through that exercise and we say, this is what I want my life to look like. We're beginning with
Right.
that's the end.
Right.
So now how do we bridge that gap? We start to ask the questions, what do I need to do? What do I need to work on? What do I need to develop or eliminate from my life, or whatever the case may be, in order to make that a reality?
Right.
So then we start to write down the things that need to happen,
Right.
you know? So we list them out. And so we kind of go from a 5-year end goal
Hmm.
to the things that we have to do big picture to make those things happen. And then we can start to look at, what do I need to do in 2020, to make the 2024, 2025 vision a reality. And then we start to talk about actually setting goals in our lives that will absolutely bleed over into our companies, right? So then we start to talk about how to take these and translate these into real goals.
Hmm.
So that's really the next step in this. So I think we've got a SMART acronym there.
Yeah. So, self-reflection. We're getting ahead of ourselves on our slides.
Yeah. So now we know where we want to go. We
Hmm.
know the big chunks of things that we want to do, that we need to do to get there. Now
Hmm.
let's start to actually create some goals that we can use to help execute this plan. And you've probably all heard about the acronym SMART goals. It's pretty much anytime you talk about goals in any depth, you're probably going to hear about this acronym. But it means, you want to walk us through those,
Yeah.
Christian?
The goals are, the acronym stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So the goal needs to be very, very specific, not a broad target. So we're going to make more money next year is not specific. Um, they need to be measurable. So oftentimes that number tied to it. When you need to have something, a data point to point to say yes or no whether you hit the goal or not.
Right.
That's what we mean by measurable. Attainable means that you could actually achieve it. It's something that you could feasibly reach. So, saying I'm going to go to the moon next year is not an attainable goal for me.
Right.
Actually, maybe it is with Tesla, not Tesla,
SpaceX. Yeah.
SpaceX. Yeah, Elon Musk. That's what I was trying to
Right.
on there. But so the goal needs to be attainable and not so far out of reach that you could never get there. Relevant. It needs to be directly connected to the bigger achievement you're going after.
Exactly.
And then timely. You need to put an end date on it.
Yeah.
You need to be able to assess the measurement of that goal, your progress towards it, by a specific date.
Yeah.
We just lost one of our lights, man.
Oh, sure
I
did.
wonder if the cold weather's affecting these guys.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay. So that's what we mean by a SMART goal. I think we have an example of a goal that is
So we've
not
got
structured
we've
properly.
got examples of good and bad goals, right?
Yep. So we're going to sell more pools. We're going to make more money next year. That is not structured in SMART format.
Well, I think too, we were guilty in the early days of just saying that. Well, sell more pools and make more money.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a SMART goal.
Well, we hear a lot of people talk in that way, and it's just kind of almost pie in the sky, aspirations to some degree. But if we take this and we break down what has to happen to sell more pools and make more money this year, something more specific, something more SMART may look like this.
Well, let me ask you a question.
All right, let's go back.
Why do you think what keeps us from going beyond that surface goal, that sell more pools, make more money, whatever? What keeps people from going deeper into that?
I think a roadblock I had at one point early in my career was that I simply never walked through the exercise of breaking down the steps that would lead to achieving a goal. And as simple as that sounds, I just never had that thought cross my mind, and I hadn't had a coach or mentor or somebody just say, "Hey, time out. What does it mean? What does it take to get there?"
Yeah.
Think about that. What are the steps that what are the things that have to happen in order for you to progress towards that goal? And I can almost remember the day, or at least where I was when I first had that brought up to me.
Uh-huh.
I remember there was a consultant who came in, and she was teaching a small leadership course. I was at the YMCA at the time, at the corporate office, going through a development course, and somebody came down and was walking us through that, and the light bulb went off. I pulled out my laptop, and I just started pounding away at the keyboard,
Okay.
writing down all of the things that needed to happen. At the time, I was a program director, and I wanted to become an exec for a location,
Okay.
and I just literally started to map out all of the things that needed to happen over the next year for me to take that next step. Like, I clear as day, and to the point that, and I was never a note taker. I was always kind of a goof off in class or whatever. And they came over, they were looking at my screen. They thought I was goofing around, looking on the internet or
Yeah.
whatever. I said I was taking notes, and I had probably an entire page worth of notes and thoughts. And but yeah, I remember that moment.
Wow.
And I just never had somebody say, "Hey, time out. What does it take? What are the steps that need to happen for you to get to that thing?"
So what if you could explain like the actual change that happened in your thinking, what did that look like?
Um, mm,
What,
I was able to
was it a was it a was it an epiphany? Uh was it an awakening? Um w- how would you describe it?
yeah, I guess it was just my aha moment.
Right?
Aha, I get it.
And the what is
Yeah,
it that you got?
I, I, I in that moment instantly understood and could visualize um, the steps that I had to take.
So you were actively becoming involved in the first creation.
Yes,
Is that right? You were playing an
yes,
active role
yes,
in the creation of your
yes,
future
yes.
rather than a passive role.
Yes, it was up to me, and the steps that had to be taken by me. Not things that had to happen outside of my control, but I have to do X, Y, and Z to
Right.
get to my end goal.
Awesome.
I need to prove this, that, and that,
Right.
and here's how I'm going to do it. Right?
Great.
I had to I had to show my ability to perform certain skills. I had to show my ability to be an analytical thinker. I had to actually lead a team of people, right? And I had to demonstrate those somehow. So I had to find opportunities to do those,
Yeah.
basically to build up my resume to
Yeah.
be worthy of becoming an
Man,
exec.
what a great, sounds like that was a huge moment for you.
It was.
Yeah. Thanks for
It
sharing that,
was.
man.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, but before that moment, I went from thinking I just want to be an exec, which in this case translates to we're going to sell more pools, we're going to make more money,
Yeah.
right? And so I shaped things into a smart format, or began to that day. And so if we take this example, sell more pools to make more money, and we break this down into something that is a little more is structured in a smart format,
Yeah.
it's going to be um, essentially how many pools, right, or how many contracts, by when are we going to get the contracts signed?
Yeah.
And I've even broken down the total goal, throughout the year so that I have benchmarks along the way, right? So we're not going to sell more pools to make more money. We're going to get 12 contracts signed by the end of Q1, 26 by the end of Q2, 12 by the end of September,
Yeah.
right? So this is what's going to help us sell more pools if 50 is
Sure.
what we're hoping for.
That's right.
If we've determined that 50 pools
That's
for
right.
our company is what would generate enough revenue to achieve the things that we want, this is how we're going to sell 50 pools this year.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great example of a good, strong SMART goal. And the thing is, we might find that one of our goals is to improve our relationship with our son, or
Sure.
to take our son on a trip
It could be.
in the first quarter of 2020.
It could be.
We might find that there's an employee that maybe is talented, but we know isn't a good fit, and maybe we need to make a change there. It really could be anything. It really just depends on what we determine
Right.
our big steps need to be.
Yeah, because we could look at this goal right here, and we could say what could get in the way of getting 12 contracts signed by the end of Q1, right? Now
Exactly.
we're going to break this down. We're going to analyze.
Yeah.
What could help? What could get in the way?
Right.
And the same, we march this right on down the line.
Yeah.
And then we're almost creating, well, you want to create SMART goals to tackle those things as well.
And that jumps us right forward into the how.
Right.
Right. So how do we have the goals? How do we make sure that we see them through?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing to dream them up and do all that, go through that exercise. It's another to actually pull it off.
Right. There's a huge step between writing it down and actually going through the process of achieving it. I think this is for me where the power of a clearly defined system for you personally or your company is what will make or break the success of the whole thing.
I know for me, I can't rely on my memory or anything else to keep, my goals in front and center in front of me. I have to have a system that I fall back on.
Right. Yeah. So do you have a time when you had a system come together, or was there a time when you had goals but not a system, or the system wasn't strong enough? Or
there's been times in my life personally where, again, going back to Stephen Covey, and also the traction system, there's a traction model that we run on, but I found that if I set long-term goals, whittle it down to 1-year goals, whittle that down to 90-day goals,
mm-hmm.
and then that translates down to the week. And
Right.
This is personal, but I know that I have to break things down into professionally, family, church, and physical.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of your typical 4 spheres.
Mm-hmm.
Church would be spiritual, but basically I break my life into 4 spheres, and if I feel like I am satisfying the needs in all those 4 spheres, spiritual, physical, emotional, and social,
Mm-hmm.
then I feel whole as a person. If I'm not, then I feel there's something missing.
Mm-hmm.
I do set goals in each one of those categories, and they're typically very there's very few,
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3,
Right.
just 2 or 3 goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I approach that from a holistic standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly from a business standpoint, we have our scorecard is a huge tool that we use. And do we have a picture?
I didn't have a
That's
picture
okay.
of the scorecard.
We've talked
today.
about it before in the previous webinar, how to run your business by the numbers.
Yeah.
We went into that, but maybe we could talk for a minute about the power of the scorecard,
Mm-hmm.
and how that helps us to keep our goals, really front and center.
Yeah.
So can we walk through
Right. Before we get into that, though, you made a really good point, or you mentioned something a second ago that I think a lot of people overlook when they begin to create goals, and that was in those 4 buckets. You have those 4 spheres. You only have 2 to 3 goals for each one of them.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, when I first started going through goal setting processes, I would have an exhaustive list of things that I wanted to do. And as I got better, I learned to group them or to identify a very small, succinct set of goals. These are the 2 or 3 most critical. If these don't happen, then nothing else will follow.
It's a powerful question buried in there, and it's what's the one thing I can do that'll make the most impact?
Yeah.
And usually there's usually a handful,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a
If
great point.
If you can dial it down to very few, 2 or 3,
Yeah.
it gets you to focus quite a bit more. So with our scorecard, we probably as a company, if you were to look at it, it appears as though we probably have a dozen data points, a dozen goals or things that we focus on, and that's. Um, but if you break that down by department, each department, every leader in our organization only has two or three numbers that they're responsible for. So they
Yeah.
each have only two goals.
Yeah. So
And one of them,
can you walk us through how we
yeah.
go through those and how we engage in those goals
Yeah.
on a regular basis?
So again, we start with the end in mind. We know what we want to achieve by December 31st.
Yeah.
Our scorecard is set up on a calendar year. We know we want to achieve by December 31st. We have historical data. Um, in most cases, sometimes we don't.
Right.
We have to make an educated guess, but we take that end goal and we break that down by month, and we break it all the way down to the week.
To the week. Yep.
And we know every week when we plug in the latest number whether we are on track or not. And when we plug the number in for the week, if we're off track, that cell, it's in an Excel sheet, that cell gets highlighted red. If we are on track or we're overperforming, we're doing better than we want to be, then that cell is highlighted green. So at a visual snapshot,
yeah,
we know which goals are on track. We know which ones are off track. So
yeah.
a series of red over a few weeks is going to stand out visually.
Yeah.
And then we're going to generate conversation around that to redirect
Right.
our efforts to bring that goal back in line or assess its attainability.
Right.
Or what's getting in the way.
Yeah. So there's some important principles, I think. One is that we're able to know pretty much at any moment whether we're on track or off track.
Yes.
Because we're tracking these things weekly. There's a sense that there's a team that are coming together on a regular basis. I think that's a key, that there's a set time when you're going to go back and review the goal and review your progress. For us, it's weekly. We do that in our leadership team meeting. So basically everybody who's responsible for these metrics, they're there in that meeting. We report on the scorecard together, pardon the wind, but we report in the group. We go through the scorecard every week. So a third key principle, I think, is accountability.
Yes.
So if we're off track, and if we all know why we're off track and there's nothing to talk about, then we don't. But if there's an issue buried in there, something we need to address, then as we go through the scorecard, we make that a topic of discussion, and we dive into it to try to see if we can solve it.
Right. So what's an example, over the past 12 months in the scorecard that, or an example of a goal that the scorecard helped us track, something that got off track for us,
Yeah.
got out of line, and the scorecard pointed that out, and then our meeting format allowed us to bring it back in line.
Okay, so one of our metrics was the number of pools that were installed last week. And so let's say the goal was 3. We were constantly seeing 2s.
Mm-hmm.
And so, after 3 weeks of that, we started to ask why. We'd always ask why. We started to do a deeper dive. And what we found was that the pools were sold. We had the pools to install, but we were unable to install quite a few of them because there were some delays. And a lot of those delays were due to permits, homeowner financing, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That led to a deeper conversation about what we could do to solve that,
mm-hmm.
and the creation of another scorecard metric that we now call pools in the red zone. So basically, if a pool is scheduled to go in within 2 weeks and we don't have every single thing we need to install it, then we call that pool in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's now a scorecard metric, and the goal on a weekly basis is 0. And if we see one pop up in the red zone, then we're asking what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's things like maybe a salesperson didn't get a site plan in, or maybe the customer hasn't signed the contract. Just whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's a red flag that goes up. But I think that's a great example of one way that this led to another solution.
Right.
That turned into another goal that just helped make our process that much better.
Right. Well, yeah, not just another goal, but it pointed out a deficiency in our operations, and we needed to turn attention towards our day to day, right, across multiple departments.
Right.
It forced those departments to have a conversation they had never had before, um, and it wasn't difficult. We didn't realize we had a problem, and
Exactly.
and we found the root cause as being these pools being in the red zone, and why there was missing data, missing information around the project, and we had to literally go around the room and identify what each person could do to affect change on that, so that we have fewer pools in the red zone.
So if we didn't have that weekly visit with the scorecard to see if we were off track,
Mm-hmm.
the issue never would have been raised. We never would have explored it. We
Mm-hmm.
never would have found the solution.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting someday to take a deeper dive, Jason, and analyze, uh, assign some sort of dollar amount to correcting that problem.
Oh yeah.
You know, how much did we save, or how much more were we able to produce by addressing that one particular issue that was identified through the scorecard.
So I think there's a really important idea there, and that's that in setting and measuring goals, it really helps us unlock our potential.
Mm-hmm.
Helps us really maximize our efficiency.
Right, right. We're getting way deeper into this than I thought we would. I don't even know what the next slide is. I guess we're coming up here on the kind of the end of this thing. We wanted to toss out a challenge to
Yeah.
everybody.
Absolutely.
And keep in mind, as we present this, there's three things we're going to challenge you to do, and we're also going to kind of put ourselves out there and offer our support in a way, and that is that if you go through this exercise and you want some feedback, or you want some thought, you want to bounce ideas off of somebody, regardless of whether you're a fiberglass pool builder, or you're a dealer of one of our products, or that doesn't matter, right?
Right, exactly.
That's completely irrelevant. But the idea that if you needed somebody to bounce ideas and thoughts off of, we would be more than happy to sit down with you, and be a sounding board.
Sure.
Just give thoughts and opinions back on these challenges. And the first one is, with the end in mind, in 5 years, what do you want your life to look like? Right. So to literally go through and think about that personally, and how that translates to professionally.
And as you go through that,
Mhm.
go deeper than the surface. As you go through a perfect day, just paint the picture of the perfect day for you,
Mhm.
and then ask yourself why. Why is that something that I want?
Right.
And what is the feeling I get out of that? But yeah, that's the place to start.
Challenge 2 would be to document the 3 to 5 things that need to happen to get you towards that goal. Right.
Right.
So for going back to my example and my aha moment, I boiled all of the notes I took down that day, and I boiled them down to 3 things I needed to focus on to build my resume up to one day become an exec for a location.
Right.
So I went from what I wanted to be big picture, I dialed it down to 3 to 5, and that helped me set strategic measures along the way.
But by the way, did you end up achieving your goal?
I did.
You did.
I did in 2012.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
I certainly did. And then create SMART goals for the first year of your 5-year plan.
Yep.
So for 2020, what do those goals look like?
Yeah.
What parts of those 3 to 5 things need to happen? Maybe it's one, right? Maybe you can only achieve one of the 3 or 5 that you identify. But to get that one goal achieved, what's the first step in 2020? What needs to happen? And how do you make that specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely, so that you can assess whether or not you're progressing effectively?
Exactly.
So again, this is what we would challenge you guys to do, And again, we'd be more than happy to chat with anyone, because I often find, and I think you do as well, folks sometimes come to us for help, and we end up getting help from them
We're just
because
in this together, right? All of
right,
us. Yeah,
right.
we're all in it together.
There are no experts. More minds, I think, lead to more knowledge,
Yeah.
more capability in the end.
I think too, along with this challenge, we would just also just give you a promise that we know if you do go through these exercises, that it's going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's going to help you really be the architect of your life and take control. And
Sure.
there's a tremendous power there in doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we close out, we want to give a shout out to a couple guys here, and they are right in front of this photograph. Tyler and Greg from Pool Chasers.
Yes.
They were out here the week after our last webinar and spent a few days with them. We had the honor of being on one of their episodes. If you're not subscribed to their podcast, we recommend that you do so. These guys are really digging deep into the pool industry. And basically, they've created a list of all the things they wanted to know about or connections they would have felt valuable when they first started their pool service company, Pool Brothers.
Right.
And they're going out there to gather that and share it for anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, their mission and their purpose is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And we had some insightful conversation with them for the podcast episode, and really enjoyed our time with them, and felt like we made just incredibly wonderful new friends that day.
Yeah. Yeah. They had us on for one of their episodes, and just a great experience.
Yeah.
Mission driven guys, value driven guys, you know, everything you'd want in a partner.
Yeah. We also had the opportunity on a separate day during their visit. I sat down with them, and we interviewed them just to kind of, you know, they're always finding out in their episodes, or the listeners are finding out about the people that they're interviewing. But
Yeah.
but you know, who are Tyler and Greg? What are these guys like? And so that was my interview with them, and we've got that video coming together soon, actually. So please go subscribe to their podcast, and get to know these guys. Reach out. They're some awesome dudes in the pool industry, and so that's that. Next session, we're gonna take December off.
Yeah.
We've got a lot happening next month.
Yeah. Christmas break.
Christmas break. There's a lot going on, a lot to get prepped for 2020, and we are going to we usually do the first or second week of the month, right after the new year. So we're gonna take a few weeks and identify the best date in January to pick up the next session of the Fiberglass Pool Builders webinar series, and so that information will be coming out in the coming weeks.
Exciting.
Jason, I'm now cold. I need to go get some coffee. But this was an insightful conversation, and it was certainly a different direction from what we've done in the past sessions, because it forces us to think. It's not something we can just grab and run with. We've got to sit down and do something with this.
Yeah.
And even every time I discuss goal setting, you know, I think a little bit differently. I think a little bit deeper, and I gain something every time. So
yeah,
hopefully you guys found you, and it help you personally, translating to professionally, and looking forward to 2020, man.
Yeah, same here.
It's gonna be a good year.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
Right on. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it, guys. Yeah, have a good one.